Good morning. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host, and we're beginning with a deep dive investigation into a sophisticated financial crime that has exposed vulnerabilities in our digital banking systems. Detectives from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations have arrested and arraigned a suspected cybercriminal accused of masterminding a fraud scheme that cost a leading microfinance institution over 11.4 million shillings. The suspect allegedly executed 38 separate fraudulent transactions, siphoning off a staggering 11,410,165 shillings. But this is more than just a story about one man. It's a window into the evolving landscape of financial crime in Kenya, where digital tools are weaponized against institutions and individuals alike. Today, we'll break down exactly how this scam was pulled off, examine the broader context of high-value fraud in the country, and debate what this means for the security of your money. We'll be joined by perspectives from cybersecurity experts, financial analysts, and legal professionals. First, let's get into the mechanics of this specific case. According to the DCI's statement on Wednesday, February 11th, the scheme was remarkably persistent. The suspect didn't hit the institution once and run. He allegedly carried out a sustained campaign, executing 38 separate transactions over a period of time. The total haul was 11,410,165 shillings. That's an average of roughly 300,000 shillings per transaction, but the amounts varied. Some transactions were as high as 1,500,000 shillings. Others were smaller, like 500,000 shillings. This method, known as smurfing in financial crime circles, involves breaking a large sum into many smaller, less suspicious transactions to avoid detection thresholds. The DCI has not named the microfinance institution, citing an ongoing investigation, but sources indicate it is a major player with a significant digital footprint. The arrest followed a detailed forensic audit that traced the digital footprints back to the suspect. Now, to put this 11.4 million shilling scam into perspective, we need to look at the scale of financial fraud in Kenya. This is not an isolated incident. Just this week, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission filed a suit seeking to recover 330.5 million shillings. That's over 330 million shillings from former sports PS Peter Kirami Kabaria and ex-FKF President Nicholas Mwendwa. That case is linked to the 2018 CHAN Stadium security contract. The alleged fraud there is nearly 30 times larger than our microfinance case. Furthermore, we've seen other massive figures in recent memory, including a 40 million shilling scandal in the health sector last year. So, while 11.4 million shillings is a life-altering sum for most Kenyans, in the grand scheme of institutional fraud, it sits on a spectrum that goes much, much higher. Let's visualize that scale for a moment. We have three key figures: the microfinance scam at 11.4 million shillings, the CHAN Stadium case at 330 million shillings, and another reference point of 40 million shillings. The disparity is stark and tells a story about where large-scale financial leakage occurs. To understand the debate around such crimes, we need to hear different voices. I'm joined now in spirit by three perspectives. First, a cybersecurity analyst. They would argue this case highlights a critical failure in transaction monitoring systems. 38 fraudulent transactions should have triggered multiple red flags. They point to the need for more advanced, AI-driven anomaly detection that can spot patterns human auditors might miss. The second perspective comes from a regulatory advocate. They contend that the real issue is a lack of stringent consequences and slow judicial processes. They ask, if we can trace the money and arrest a suspect, can we secure a conviction and full restitution quickly enough to deter the next criminal? The slow grind of cases like the 330 million shilling CHAN scandal, which is only now being pursued in court years later, undermines public faith. The third voice is that of an economic analyst. They look at the macro impact. They note that 11.4 million shillings stolen from a microfinance institution isn't just a loss on a balance sheet. That's capital that was meant to be lent out to small business owners, to farmers, to entrepreneurs. That theft directly stifles economic growth at the grassroots level. It's a double crime, first against the institution, and second against the potential borrowers who will never get that loan. Now, let's delve deeper into the how. How does one person allegedly move 11.4 million shillings out of a secured financial system? The DCI's preliminary findings suggest a combination of social engineering and system exploitation. Social engineering is the human element, perhaps phishing emails to gain employee credentials or pretexting calls to authorize transactions. The system exploitation could involve manipulating internal processes or exploiting a software vulnerability. 38 transactions indicate patience and planning. This wasn't a smash and grab, it was a careful bleed. The suspect likely studied the institution's workflows, its approval limits for different staff levels, and its reconciliation schedules. By keeping individual transactions often below certain thresholds, like 500,000 shillings or 1,500,000 shillings, they flew under the radar of automated systems set to flag only very large single transfers. This case also forces us to confront a new reality: the democratization of fraud. High-tech crime is no longer the exclusive domain of international syndicates. With knowledge gleaned from the internet, dark web forums, and even leaked corporate training materials, individuals can orchestrate complex attacks. The tools are available. The question is whether our defenses are evolving just as quickly. Let's talk about the human cost. Beyond the institutional loss, scams erode trust. When people hear about 11.4 million shillings vanishing from a bank, or 330 million shillings linked to a sports contract, they question the integrity of every institution. This erosion of trust has a chilling effect on investment, on savings, and on the overall financial inclusion agenda. If people don't trust digital systems, they revert to cash, which has its own risks and limitations. The government, under President William Ruto, has emphasized a digital transformation agenda. But this agenda cannot succeed without a parallel and equally vigorous cybersecurity and anti-fraud agenda. The two must be built together from the ground up. Now we turn to the broader African and global context. Our fourth source from The Guardian Africa isn't about fraud, but it's about another digital phenomenon: the use of AI chatbots for mental health advice in Nigeria. This is relevant because it shows how rapidly populations are adopting and adapting digital tools, often in the absence of formal, regulated systems. In finance, this same adaptive energy can be channeled negatively. If people are using AI for therapy because professional help is inaccessible, what's to stop criminals from using AI to write more convincing phishing emails or to simulate voices for authorization scams? The technology is dual use. The article notes calls for tighter regulation of AI in mental health. Similar, urgent calls are needed for its use in financial security. Our fifth source, a Telegram snippet about the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, is a reminder that institutional integrity battles are global. While the content is about climate policy, the headline "EPA revokes key findings" speaks to how official positions and safeguards can be changed, sometimes creating vulnerabilities. In our financial context, it parallels how internal policies and controls at an institution can be weakened, ignored, or revoked, intentionally or not, creating the gaps that fraudsters exploit. Back to our local case. The suspect is now arraigned. What happens next? The legal process will be a test of our forensic evidence and judicial efficiency. Can prosecutors clearly map the 38 transactions to a single individual, proving intent and action beyond reasonable doubt? The defense will likely challenge the digital evidence chain, the methods of collection, and perhaps argue for mistaken identity or system error. This is where the detailed audit trail is crucial. Each of those 38 transactions is a data point in a story the prosecution must tell. Meanwhile, the microfinance institution faces a reputational and financial hit. They will need to review their entire security posture, likely at a significant cost, and reassure their customers. Those costs ultimately are passed on to consumers in some form. So, where does this leave us? We have a multi-layered problem. At the individual level, you have a suspect allegedly exploiting a system. At the institutional level, you have controls that failed multiple times. At the national level, you have a pattern of high-value fraud cases, from 11.4 million shillings to 330 million shillings, indicating a systemic vulnerability. And at the technological level, you have tools becoming more accessible to potential criminals. The debate, therefore, isn't just about catching one person. It's about a holistic response. Some argue for heavier investment in regulatory technology, or Reg Tech, to give bodies like the Central Bank of Kenya real-time oversight capabilities. Others say the focus must be on severe, expedited punishment to create a tangible deterrent. Yet another school of thought emphasizes public education, teaching employees and customers alike to recognize and report social engineering attempts. In the end, the 11.4 million shilling scam is a cautionary tale for Kenya's digital future. As we rush toward a cash-light economy, spurred by government policy and private innovation, we must build the walls as high as we build the bridges. The arrest is a good first step. It shows the DCI's cyber unit has capability. But preventing the next 38 transactions is the real goal. It requires a partnership between government, private sector, and the public. It requires investing in people as much as in software, and it requires a judicial system that can dispense justice swiftly enough to matter. As we close, remember that the numbers we discussed today, 11,410,165 shillings, 38 transactions, 330.5 million shillings, are not just statistics. They represent a drain on our national economy, a breach of trust, and a challenge we must collectively overcome. The solution lies in vigilance, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to integrity at every level. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more investigative reporting. I'm your host, signing off.